And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
I'm a big fan of dungeon games, and I'm always looking for new ones. Even though I think Descent is a fantastic version, I'm looking for new ones, but I have to be honest, I'm not really that big of a fan of the idea of using a card game and making into a dungeon game, because all the ones I've played so far really haven't impressed me. In fact, they're just not good at all. So it was with a bit of trepidation that I tried out this new game called Hero Immortal King. This is the Den of Dementia, and actually there's three different sets. The other one here is the Lair of the Lich, and then this one here is the Infernal Forge. Three different games. They're basically all the same thing with different heroes and villains in each one, and you can even mix and match them. It doesn't really change the game much. The game is for 1 to 2 players. Now that's interesting in of itself because it supports solitaire play, but really this is a game that only is solitaire. Yes, you can have 2 players playing each other. One person controls the monsters, but that really just in the essence of this game doesn't. You don't have a lot of choices as the monster, and you're kind of just basically playing off what the hero does, and it's maybe a way to stop him and see how far he gets. I would almost compare it to Mastermind. When you're playing 2-player Mastermind, one person sets up the puzzle and the other person solves it. I have a similar kind of feel here. That being said, as a solitaire exercise, it's not bad. I actually enjoy it. It's fairly difficult. Some of the sets are harder than other ones, but the idea is interesting, and it's fairly simplistic, and there's a few flaws, I think, so I don't think it's great, but it's good, and I like to see this idea taken further. If I was going to take a dungeon crawl and put it into a card game, something I don't think should happen anyway, but if I was, this is pretty close to what it should be. Here we basically have this layout of the game. There's a set of dungeon cards which are split evenly into 3 piles. This big bad guy, the master of the dungeon, is placed in the back. Then the hero has several cards that he is going to pick between. 4 of them are heroes, the rest are equipment. The hero can only take 5 of these cards, so he can take 1 hero and then 4 pieces of equipment, or he can take 2 heroes and 3 pieces of equipment, etc. I found that the game seems to work best with 2 heroes and 3 pieces of equipment because any more than 2 heroes in the game penalizes you. Now as the game progresses, the bad guy is going to turn over the top card of each deck. What the heroes are basically trying to do is they're trying to go through one of these decks completely, which allows them to fight the final monster. During the course of the game, the heroes have these red chips. These are courage chips. They'll start with 5, and these chips will allow them to stay in the game. If you ever lose all of them, well, then you're out of the game. The bad guy will also be getting what are called fear chips. When he gets enough of these, he can spend them to do different things to the hero, like making him re-roll a die roll, adding strength to one of the monsters, or not revealing a monster, making a hero just attack it and seeing what he gets. Each hero starts with a mana token on them, and if you look at the heroes, you'll see that they each have a skill, something they use all the time, a temporary power, which requires them to discard this mana token, and then ultimate power, which requires them to get a set of monsters, one of each color. Each monster has a color, if you see this red icon up in the corner. So if you get red, yellow, green, blue, that's enough to trigger your ultimate power if you were by yourself. If you have 2 heroes, you'll need 2 of each color. If you have 3 heroes, you need 3 of each color. So you can see that the ultimate power is really only that useful when you're by yourself. Other than that, it doesn't seem that great. In fact, the ultimate powers aren't that powerful anyway. But the temporary powers are very, very useful. On a player's turn, basically they decide which pile they're going to attack, or which monster they're going to attack. For example, this monster here is a 9 strength. The player rolls a 6-sided die and tries to match that number or higher. Well, that's pretty much impossible to do with a 6-sided die, but fortunately this hero here rolls an 8-sided die instead, and the other guy lets you roll the dice twice and keep which one you want to do. Now still that's not good enough because an 8 is not as high as a 9, but perhaps the equipment can do better. For example, this potion will add 3 to the current combat roll. Still, a 9 is going to be difficult. Other monsters are easier to beat. This one here is you play a game of paper, rock, scissors against the opponent. And so once you beat a monster, you keep it. If you lose to the monster, you simply give up one of your courage tokens and you give the dungeon master a fear token. If you ever roll 1 on your die, that also gives the Dungeon Master a fear token, and he can use those fear tokens in various ways, as I've already mentioned. So that's basically the way the game works. You're trying to get through one of these and then fight the bad guy. In this case, the bad guy is a 10, although he has a special ability that players will lose a courage token if all the face-up monsters are demons. And so the players have to be on the lookout for that. As I said, if you use all 4 heroes, it kind of penalizes you. All 4 heroes work together and modify a single combat roll, which when you have all their special powers is really useful. However, there are some monsters, for example, a few monsters have their strength increases on the amount of adventurers you have. For example, if it's adventurers times 3 and you have 2, that monster has a strength of 6, but if you have 4, that monster has a strength of 12, which is going to be very difficult to beat no matter which group of adventurers you're using. In fact, with a group of 4 adventurers, I have yet to win the game, and I've played it probably 15 times by myself. As a solitaire game, it's kind of enjoyable. I've beaten it. Every time I've beaten it, it's been with 2 heroes or 1 hero, and with 1 hero, that's kind of pushing it. I really think they want you to use 2 heroes and 3 equipment. Could be wrong. Now, does it feel like you're going through dungeon? Well, kind of. I mean, the artwork is good, and there's traps, and there's monsters, and the monsters themselves, though, are kind of a little vague, and they just have 1 number on them, or maybe they have some special abilities, and I found myself constantly having to look at the page of special abilities here in the book to see, exactly what the monsters do. But it's not too bad. It's not that it's complex. You roll a die, add the modifier, see if you win. As I said, the dungeon player is, he can do a few things, switch decks of cards, make you re-roll a die, but he's kind of there just to be annoying, and if you win as a dungeon master, you feel like the player who was playing the heroes lost, not that you won. And so the game works best as a solitaire exercise. I'm not usually a fan of solitaire games, but I like this one. You can mix heroes and monsters from different decks together. I haven't found the need to do that. I enjoy playing with all 3 decks. The decks are certainly different in how hard they are. The Den of Dementia here is a much more difficult for the heroes, I think, than the Infernal Fort. The Lair of the Lich, I think, is the easiest. This one comes with a character who's called Hero the Immortal King, and that guy's pretty strong. You bring one of his cronies along who doubles the attack roll, and you can really roll through the monsters. So I found much more success in this set than I have in this. I don't think you need to get all 3. I think 1 would be fine, and it's not something that you're going to want to play all the time. It's more of a diversion. Say, I got some time. I'm going to play this by myself. The people I played it with have found it okay. No one's really thought it was a great 2-player game, but a few people said, well, let me try that and see how well I do and go through the dungeon. The tiddlywinks for the pieces, the dice that are included, they're not bad. Like I said, the artwork's good. There seems to be variety between the characters and such, but it's still very simplistic. It's the best card game version of a dungeon romp that there is, and that's not high praise because most of the ones I played are bad, but it's good. But for solitaire and for 10 minutes of your time. Like I said, I played it several times because I keep trying to win, and then I wonder maybe I should have just played some computer flash game. I don't know. Maybe the shuffling helps me out a little bit, makes it a little bit better. It's good. Not great, entertaining, and maybe with some expansions we can see some real work and some real changes to the system. So I'll give it a recommendation tentatively if you're looking for something to play by yourself and that is a simplistic dungeon romp.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.